So, good morning to you all participants. Hope you are enjoying each of these sessions that we are presenting here. Actually, this workshop should have been conducted in the campus of NIT Warangal, but because of extraordinary situations, we had to reconfigure it for this online mode. And now today we are going to start with a very good topic on pedagogical skills, for which we have a very beautiful personality, that is Professor DVSS Siva Sarma. Incidentally, we know each other for the last 30 years, and he's a very active researcher and administrator. So, coming to a formal introduction, so Professor DVSS Siva Sarma is Professor of Electrical Engineering at NIT Warangal. He has been serving the institute in several capacities, like right now he is Dean Faculty. Prior to that, he was also part of IEEE activities, and he served as head of electrical department, and he was actually involved in various student activities like IEEE, and he did that job in such a outstanding way. He was awarded outstanding branch counselor for the region 10 of IEEE. In fact, as part of this IEEE activity, he has introduced a new audit course called EPICS in collaboration with Purdue University. And I think it is now in its 5th or 6th year of implementation. The idea here is, like, the students have to select a rural or community-based project which will ultimately help them to improve their well-being. So, in fact, he was heading that particular EPICS activities in the college, and we have formally introduced our curriculum, for which we give some kind of weightage in their what do you call score sheet. And now coming to his research areas, his research areas are signal processing and machine learning applications in power systems, power quality, condition monitoring, wide area monitoring and protection, grid integration of renewable energy sources. And he's also very active in pedagogical matters, like how to improve the teaching learning process. So he was also a key member of teaching learning center of NIT Warangal, which was set up under Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya on teaching learning aspects. So without loss of much time, I hand over the proceedings to Siva Sarma, and I hope you will all enjoy his lecture. Thank you, one and all. Siva Sarma?
Yeah. Just
now you can.
Yeah. How do I suppress this the screen, participants screen here, and it is obstructing my view on the main screen?
No, you can collapse, sir. You can collapse the.
వ్యూ ఎవ్రీవన్ దగ్గర అక్కడ నువ్వు క్లిక్ చేస్తే
వ్యూ ఎవ్రీవన్ హైడ్ ఎవ్రీవన్ ఓకే
వ్యూ ఎవ్రీవన్ అని ఉంది కదా,
యా
అది క్లిక్ చేసి హైడ్ ఎవ్రీవన్ అను.
You are able to see my screen? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, sir, we are able to see.
Yeah.
And you can click the present mode kira F5 kote.
Yes, sir.
How
Okay.
is it?
It's, present mode, sir.
It's fine. Yeah, it's good.
Thank you, Krishnanand, for the nice introduction, and thank you, Ravi Kumar, for giving me the opportunity to talk
Function F5. Huh?
Function?
It's okay, sir. No, carry on. He has
Sir,
done it.
It is in presentation mode, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes. You are in the presentation mode. Yeah.
It is presenting well.
Okay. So, thank you
All
once
the
again.
voice lo break వస్తుంది చూసుకో.
Voice lo break వస్తుంది anyway చెప్పాలా? And let me look at the chat box. Where it is the chat box?
Message symbol, sir. No.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
okay. Fine.
Your audio is okay, sir. Good.
Fine. So, good morning to you all. So, the topic of the presentation that I have chosen to talk to, I came to know that most of you are teachers and then prospective teachers, the research scholars, and maybe I was told that maybe 10% of you are not teaching in the scientists are not in the teaching profession. Essentially, the talk that I have planned is targeting towards the teachers or prospective teachers, and hence I request beg pardon with the scientists for whom it may not be very appropriate. But however, this is essentially regarding the education and the challenges that we are facing today, and hence possibly even for scientists it may be relevant. Yeah. So now we are all going through a very peculiar conditions where we have never seen the conditions what we are experiencing now. We never have seen or not even expected such a pandemic situation. Almost every sphere of activity is affecting this pandemic is being affected by every sphere of our activity, including the education as well. But irrespective of whether it is in the present day pandemic where we look at now, we never thought of having such a education, such a program being organized from NIT Warangal, where participants will be sitting from their homes. We would not have thought about it earlier, but now we are able to. That's what we are seeing as a reality. Everyone is at the comfort of our houses, and then we are able to attend several programs, and then we are maximizing the learnings. So, and hence this pandemic situation has given us an opportunity to look into our domains of activities, what we are doing, and then coming out with a new innovative ways by which we carry on our business to progress, to make a progress. So in this context, as a teacher, we're all experiencing a different conditions where we have not experienced earlier, and then we are going to look at certain issues which essentially the business in terms of our education, where we have a synchronous, engaging the student in a synchronous mode and engaging the student in asynchronous mode. We have to engage the students both in synchronous and asynchronous mode with essential objective of making the students to learn. So my talk is all about that. So let me state the rules of the game. Chat box.
Sir,
Yeah,
I think now you may not be able to get the chat box. I think so. Why? Because you are in a slide mode. Are you able to get the chat box, sir?
Yeah, I'm able to see. But is the chat box is obstructing you or is my screen?
No. Absolutely. It is not obstructing. It's only for you. Yeah. Fine.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
I'm able to see the chat box as
Yes,
because
fine,
I
sir.
see some
Fine.
interaction.
But it is not obstructing us. Only we can see only your PPT.
Yeah. So let me state the rules of the game very clear. So here I am sharing some of the ideas. What I am sharing here, they're not of mine, and they are gathered over years of experience taken from various references, various resource persons whom I come across. So what I am presenting is collection of the wisdom what I gained over the period over years of time. And I don't claim to be an expert in this domain, what is being taught, but I only claim that I have a little more experience than all of you on this topic of the discussion. So let me state the objectives of the presentation. What is the objectives with which I'm intended to convey to the audience? So here I would like to give the outline of the topic of the pedagogy, digital pedagogy, and how the digital pedagogical principles will help in enhance the learner's learning both in the synchronous mode as well as in the asynchronous mode. Essentially, my focus is on engaging the students in asynchronous mode and give the background of this topic, and then to make some ideas for the participants to explore further for themselves. And also I want to throw some light on challenges in implementing the pedagogy in the higher education in the present context as well as in the general context. And what is the need to use the digital technology in practicing the pedagogical methods in the teaching learning process. And then I'll throw some light on the importance of the asynchronous learning and how we can maximize the learning of the learners using the asynchronous mode of learning. And then possibly based on the time that is available, I look into some demonstration of some of the digital tools that can be used for enhancing the learning of the learners and engaging them in an asynchronous mode, especially the Edmodo platform. Some of you may be knowing that, but I would like to focus on that. This is the broad objectives with which I have planned for my presentation. Now, we are all in the business of education. And we all know that the digitalization of the world, whole digital world is getting digitalized. So every sphere of activity, the digital era has its effect on every sphere of activity the human beings are engaged with, and the education sector is no exception. And now, education sector influence of this digital era on education must be known very well by the teachers, essentially because the education is the foundation with which the whole world is created, is looking at taking out a change. For example, this Nelson Mandela's quote, where education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. The world is to make a progress in the right direction. Education is the key pillar, and we are in the business of education. Though you must have an idea about how I can make my learners more educated and then understand the principles of digital pedagogy associated with education must be known to us. And then success in the future will not be based on how much people know, but about their ability to think and act creatively. I will repeat this sentence, very, very powerful sentence, where the success of the future of anyone will not be based on how much their people know, but is only about their application of the knowledge, what they know, to think and act creatively to create as engineers to create products, new products and creating new services. The ability to do that only decides the success. Not just simply how much knowledge is known is no longer a valid index for measurement of the success. So hence, since we are in the business of education, we should make our students the ability to think and act creatively is the prime objective of our education. Now, the digital era is influencing every paradigm of life. Every sphere of human life is affected by the digital era, and education is no exception. If you look at the digital era, how it is influencing, broadly it is influencing in the two fundamental domains which is influencing is one is replacing the work through automation, right? I'm sure all of you are aware of the there are a lot of automations taking place in the process industry, and then an example is all of you know that the Alibaba chain of hotels where you don't have a single human being present in the country, complete hospitalization services that is extended by Alibaba chain of hotels. There's no human intervention, everything is mechanized, so automation. So industrial automation is one such thing where the technology is influencing. And another most important area which is influenced by the digital era is that the way that we communicate. The changing communications is influencing the key technology that is influencing every sphere of activity, and especially with regard to the collaboration and knowledge creation. And then essentially the communication is the key technology which is influenced by the digital era. And then if you want to compete with the in the business of education, you must adapt to the new changes that is taking place in the communication. I must be able to adapt the technology into my education sector as well. Now, since we are all in the business of education, where we are producing and making the preparation of the future human resources required for future, and what should be our focus? When we are producing the future engineers or future manpower, what should be the bigger objectives of our education? So now, we should nurture the focus of our education should be to nurture the human activities, human capabilities must be nurtured. That means the human beings, now most of the automation, the human beings are replaced with machines. So wherever human beings are replaced by the machines, possibly human beings do not find a place. So when we are planning to produce the manpower for the future, our focus should be on nurturing their human skills rather than their routine work which the machines can replace. In other words, the human beings possess capabilities for innovation, capabilities for nonlinear thinking, and most importantly, collaborative knowledge creation. That means two human beings can collaborate and create a new knowledge which the machines may not be able to do that. So that means here, this is a reference that I taken from the Journal of Canadian Association of Curriculum Studies. Very interesting article. I request those who are interested, please go through that. That gives us insight into the future of education in the digital era. Essentially now the AI, we talk about the artificial intelligence and machine learning is taking into the lead steps into the every sphere of activities. So essentially now we can, the machine, any intelligent algorithms of the machine learning can learn as much as what is already in the data source, and they are most effective within the closed systems such as in the game of chess or a poker. But suppose if you are looking at some area where it is not predefined, the artificial intelligence possibly may not be able to. At the most, you can do prediction, but then if it encounters a new situation which you cannot thought about it, all this human intelligence and whatever the intelligence algorithms will fail. So essentially, that means the development of the human skill should be towards nurturing, supporting students to develop uniquely human skills beyond what computers can do or can think will soon be able to achieve should be the central goal of contemporary education. That means my focus of education should be towards nurture the human skills which machine cannot possess, right? So that is where the human beings will find their relevance in when the digital communications is going to do the automation and so on and so forth. And hence, being the educationist, our fundamental shift towards the human, recognizing the human skill recognition and development should be, development of that skill should be the primary focus of the education institution, the primary focus of the educationist. And now, if this is the bigger perspective with which education business is to be carried out, you look at the old paradigm of teacher as prime source of knowledge is no longer valid. I'm sure the world is changing. The teacher, there are two ends. The teacher says that I will tell you what I know, and the learner will take a theme that I will find out what I need to know, right? These two are the two ends of it. Now, what is required is education is an experience that has formative effect on the way one thinks, feels, and acts. This is the bigger objective of education. Education is providing an experience to the students, to learner, which has a formative effect. That means effect which can influence his thinking, influence his feeling, and influence his actions. This is where in the cognitive domain we call as a cognitive skills. The skills which affects the affective domain, the skills that affects the psychomotor domain. So this is the bigger objective of the education, where you should be able to influence his thinking, influences the feeling of the learners, influences the actions of the learners. This is the bigger perspective of the education. Now let us look at what is the digital pedagogy. So I'm sure being in the teachers, many of you heard about and attended several lectures on the pedagogy and so on and the importance of it. I don't need to stress upon. The pedagogy is concerned with the learning in the context of a teaching and teaching that has learning as its objectives. Right? Learning is in the context of teaching. Forget about the civil engineering or mechanical engineering, and essentially I'm involved in the teaching. I expect what I should make, what the processes that I adopt, what are the methods that I should adopt, so that the learning of the learner is my ultimate objective. The art of science of learning, understanding the learning, is the pedagogy. Pedagogy is focused on the process of teaching and learning, while the education system provides a context. Now, digital pedagogy is as much about using digital tools thoughtfully as it is about deciding when to use digital tools, when not to use the digital tools, what for use the digital tools, which tool you use it for what purpose, and paying attention to the impact of these digital tools on the learning of the learner is the digital pedagogy. Understand? I repeat again, paying attention to the impact of these digital tools, what I am engaging on, how it is influencing the learner, which tool is influencing the learner, and which objectives of the learning objectives will be the primary focus of the digital pedagogy. And hence the MHRD also and Krishnanand also has organized several programs on the digital pedagogy under TechKeep. It is a main focus of the digital pedagogy, has been the focus of all the technical education. TechKeep is conducting several programs on that. So that is the bigger picture of what I am talking about, the digital pedagogy. Now let me go to some steps where it's always I should connect with the knowledge what generally expected, because I see the lot of research scholars as present. What is learning? So learning, we have several myths about the learning. So if I share something, you are able to tell something, share it tomorrow in the examination, then that's not the learning. So here is learning results from what the student does and thinks, only from what the student does and thinks. That means once a student has learned, it means his behavior, what he does, what his actions, and what he thinks. These are the two things which influence the learning. So obviously learning results from what the student does and thinks, and only from what the student does and thinks. The teacher, what is the role of the teacher? The role of the teacher is he can only advance the learning by influencing what the student does to learn, right? I repeat this, the teacher's role is he will direct the learner to advance his learning by influencing what the student does to learn. He has to do something to learn. So what the teacher's role is only to advance his learning by making him or by directing him to do certain things, right, which advances his learning. So here the famous quote by Confucius: learning without a thought is a labor lost, and thought without learning is perilous. That means to say, sir, the learning you can say only when there is a change in the thinking. If without changing the thought process, without creating a thought process, you cannot say that there is a learning has taken place in the learner. That is what is called as the learning. And now the learning is a process and is not a product. However, because this process takes place in the mind of the learner, we can only infer that it has occurred from the student's performance. The student performance is only an indirect way of assessing that the student has learned. But essentially, it is a process and is not a product by itself. And learning involves changing the knowledge, beliefs, behavior, and attitudes. I repeat again. So they philosophically, people may think that it is a philosophical, but it is essentially, this is what the primary goal of the education should be. The learning involves a change in the knowledge, change in the belief, change in the behavior, and change in the attitude of the system, right? Changing of the learner. But the question is, for which we don't have answer. If I am teaching a course, am I able to influencing him in his knowledge? I can, at the most what I'm doing is I'm influencing his knowledge, right? I'm making him change in the beliefs. It's a hard thing to do. Change in his behavior, no, I'm not sure about whether it is be able to fulfill. But then change in the attitudes, possibly not. Maybe there's some great teachers where by virtue of their qualities and what they're not only preaching but their practices, possibly it creates a change in their thoughts, change in their beliefs, change in their behaviors, and change in their attitudes. But it is not in the general case. This change unfolds over time. It is not fleeting, but rather has a lasting impact. Overnight, students cannot change their behaviors, change in their attitudes, but this is where collectively providing an environment, right? Providing an environment, right environment where this learning he should impact him on how students think and act. Not this in the role of a teacher, but this in the whole education atmosphere and environment is going to play a bigger role in this. Learning is not something done to the students, but rather something students do to themselves. Please, I draw your attention, especially the young scholars here. The learning is not something done to the student by the teacher, but rather something students to do themselves, right? It is the direct results of how students interpret. Just a minute. Yeah, to do their experiences, conscious, unconscious, past and present, right? How do they respond to the learner's experience of conscious, unconscious, past and present? These are the things which is influences his learning. But then if your bigger objective of a teacher is to affect his learning, don't we need to pay attention to this? Yes, whether we agree or not, we need to pay attention to this as well. But so now I'll quote some few, one of the some here and there I'll quote some famous quotations here. If you look at the quotation from Albert Einstein, I never teach my students, I only attempt to provide the conditions in which they can learn. Right? What does it enforces? The objective of my teacher is to provide the environment in which the students can advance their learning. Right? So now in the world of ever more radical and rapid changes, acquiring the habit of continuous learning is a matter of survival. I repeat, in the world of ever more radical and rapid changes that are taking place, acquiring the habit of continuous learning is a matter of survival. It's not for excellence, it's a survival. If you need to survive, you need to have. That's the reason why the National Board of Accreditation included lifelong learning is an attribute of an NBA. The graduates who are coming out of our education institutions must have inculcate the habit of lifelong learning, because that's a matter of survival for the future. Now, if you look at there's a very famous quote which speaks the contemporary contemporary education should follow, is Alvin Toffler. The illiterate of the 21st century is not the one who do not write and read or who can read, but the one who cannot learn, who cannot unlearn, and who cannot relearn, right? Who cannot learn, not only learning, but you need to unlearn and you need to relearn. So if your objective of the education is make the learner to learn, then you need to also take into consideration of making the students to unlearn the wrong things what they have already learned. But then some methods what has been adopted, something has learned, they also should make them to relearn, right? So this is the key for the illiterate of the 21st century is the one who cannot follow learning, unlearning, and relearning is illiterate. Okay, right? This is a very much applicable for all of us to think about it and then accordingly formulate the education with which we are moving ahead. Now, what do we know about how we learn? It is essential. I'm getting into some details in terms of how a learner learns. And now the knowledge is constructed in the learner's mind, right? I'm sure all of you agree with that. I'm not sure how many of you agree that the knowledge is constructed in the learner's mind and we are not creating anything. right? It is only enabling the learner to construct the knowledge. Something from dynamics he is taking something, and something else he is taking some other subject, and then has to, knowledge is something, he is getting a knowledge in mechanical engineering. It is a construction of the different input that is being coming from a different domains, and put that, and that is what it is, knowledge is. Now, when we talk to the students, our thoughts do not travel seamlessly, in the sense, I have something, for example, I take an example of, when I say I talk about the classroom. So let us assume that I want to talk to students about the classroom. I say, dear students, I'm going to talk about the classroom. Then immediately they will get, because the classroom has some perception, which all students have some perception about the past, their past. So each one of them think about their classroom, what they have experienced in the earlier scenarios, right? Likewise, if a railway station, when I say railway station, there could be a number of railway stations, but the functional pictures on a railway station, when I say imagine a railway station, everybody will look at, because they have already some mental maps about the railway station, mental maps about the classrooms are already in mind. Then I can add something. If you want to do something in automation in a railway station, I can talk about it without really getting into the background of railway station, what it is, what is the functionalities, because it is already there in their minds. Now, if you look at in the same way, if you are trying to impart some new concept, and these concepts will be interpreted by the users using their already pre-existed mental models, right? So they already have some mental models based on their past experiences, based on their past knowledge, and then this concept they think only from that perspective. So in that sense, so though I am conveying the same concept to the students, but the students, based on their past and based on their mental models, they try to think in their own different ways. In other words, what I have in mind as a teacher, make them to realize, will not seamlessly travel to the brain of the students, but then the students in their mind, in their perceptions, will have a distorted models, different models. What I have in mind will not be able to realize by the students, because of it influences their mental models, pre-existing mental models. Now, is it not the responsibility of the teacher to take the mental models of the students, which already they carry with them? But then I'm not talking specifically with regard to the engineering education, or this is in general, right? So now you may ask, in fact, in many of the questions what I encountered when I'm presenting here in the earlier was, where is the question of, in the present day engineering education, where do I get a chance to study the mental models of the students and simulate the students and building the new models with understanding their existing models? I have no doubt it is not I go for a 60 minutes of duration and I get 30 hours and I go and deliver my class, but you have a very less time to focus on these aspects. But whether we agree, whether we do it or not, but this is something what is influencing his learning, right? So if your bigger objective is to make his learning to be effective, I also need to understand what their mental models, distorted mental models, each of the learners they do have, and then it is some responsibility to be taken by the teachers to correct these mental models and mental maps, so that what I have in mind at the end of the day, I want to talk about some new concept, they should realize the same concept. All of them, in all 60 students should have the same concept what I have in my mind. So if that is to be taken into consideration, learners must experience this. These mental models do not change slowly, but they change they don't change rapidly, they change very slowly. So learner must experience that their mental models do not work or faulty. So as a learner, what I have in mind, whether that works or this is faulty, or this is the right model, what I should have, right conception or a perception that I should have, must be altered before I start building on that, right? So in that context, it is essential that the mental models also need to be worked out by the teacher, right? So any questions at this point of time? I would be happy if some of you are concur with me, or if you have some of you, I will be more happy if you encounter or say that we don't agree. Any of you can unmute and then speak if any of you want to share or counter any or comment on the observations what I'm making here. Are you able to hear my?
What you say is true, sir. Most of the time, what you are trying to say is exactly true, and that's why better. Most of the time, I try to give the real life application so that they really visualize the things. Is it right, or some other way we should do it, sir?
Yeah. Somebody saying no audio. Is it 10:04? Is all right? Yeah. Okay. I'll proceed. Now, let me look at the aspects of digital pedagogy. There are three important aspects of the teaching learning. One is the course planning. The another is student engagement, how you engage the students. And the third important aspect is the assessing the performance of the student. These are the three aspects of any education. The course planning, that's what we do. We formulate the curriculum, keeping the future targets into consideration. What are the outcomes of the program outcomes that we need to make the learners to go out, and that's what is we are all engaged with NBA and course outcomes and the course. That's what accordingly we do the course planning. I don't talk much focus on the course planning, but that's why I do it. But then my point of focus here is on engaging the students. And then performance assessment also is not going to be the focus of it, focus of my. So how do I engage the students to meet the bigger objectives of the digital pedagogy which we just discussed? Okay.
I interrupt you and ask a question.
Yeah, please. We'll be happy if you have any of you have any questions.
Sir, actually it is regarding the previous slide. Sir,
Can you speak? Can you speak loud? Increase your volume. I am not able to hear.
This is regarding the previous slide, sir.
Yeah, which one? This one? This one?
The previous slide. Previous.
Look at I am shifting my slides. Please look at which.
Yeah. Just you have changed it. Forward. Please come forward. Yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sir, actually, if a teacher is teaching many students, and suppose each individual student has a different mental map, then how the teacher will teach in such a fashion that it will comply with each one's individual mental map?
Absolutely. May I know your name, please? You are?
Anando, sir.
Okay. You are from?
Sir, NIT Durgapur.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Exactly. That is the what I am focusing on. The point what I want to focus is on that. Right? Personalization in the classroom is essential component contributing to the learning. Personalization, that means in a class of 60, how the personalization means? I go for individual teaching, right? That's what is the personalization. I should pay 60 different students. So when my time is only 60 minutes, so within the time of 60 minutes, how do I do the personalization in the, it's not possible, right? That's the point what I want to drive exactly. I'm going to address that, Anand Mohan. Is that fine?
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yeah. So how do I engage the students, 60 different learners, how do I engage them? So this is where our digital tools that comes in too, right? In a conventional way of, like our friend from Durgapur has mentioned, it's not possible in a class of 60 minutes of class or 60 minutes in such a 30 hours or 40 hours in a semester, understanding the mental maps of who is following, who is not following, how he is making a progress, whether it is very difficult. We do conduct some quiz or sometime in between, and then they get some marks, and hardly we pay attention to why he got less marks and why he got more marks. Some kind of a personalized counseling happens now and then, but really to the extent with which at the end of the semester, if you give his assessment, this is where you have gone wrong, it is not going to be any useful to the student. But then we should engage the students in the personalized manner in the process of the education, right from my second class, right from the first week. So how do I engage them? That's my focus of talk here, and using the digital tools for adopting that. right? The student engagement can be in the synchronous mode or it can be in the asynchronous mode. So now what we are conversant with is in a synchronous mode. This is what friend from Durgapur is sharing, that in a synchronous mode of 60 minutes, I just know where that I can engage, understand in the mental maps of the students, but engaging the students in asynchronous mode means not necessarily face to face on a 60 minutes of class. I'm talking about all the rest of the 23 hours in a day, right? So engaging the students in asynchronous mode, and it is believed and is proved across the educational literacy that the engaging the student in asynchronous mode has a profound influence on the learning ability of the student, right? If he has a profound influence, not only, I'm not to undermine the synchronous mode of engaging the students, no doubt it has. So in the synchronous engagement, I can know the student and understand possibly some of the, we may not have a time to interact with all individually, but then most of the time we engage them once the student will come out, and then we engage the students in clarifying certain doubts and so on and so forth. But that has a limited extent to which you can implement. But asynchronous mode, if you only have some method by which you engage the students in asynchronous mode, that has a profound, I can, how do I engage the students in asynchronous mode? That is the next point of attention which I'm going to focus on. And to meet the objectives, the teachers must be acquainted with the domain knowledge. I'm sure that all of us are, when you say you are a master, you obtain your master's and PhD, and then teaching something like any subject, you are expected to be a master in that particular domain. There's no question of, we are assuming that it is taken for granted, right? Somebody teaching some subject, he's a master in that. But then is that alone is sufficient, right? It's not sufficient, but it is also need to understand certain pedagogical principles that are associated with the learning is also must be known by the teacher. That is the reason why we say that all the for example, NIT Warangal, as government of India has initiated some about establishing some teaching learning centers all over the country, and we have one at NIT Warangal where the teachers are engaged continuously. The number of workshops or the month-long and 2 months long programs for imparting the pedagogical principles to the teachers is being conducted as part of the activities of the TLC at NIT Warangal, and hence that is a very important aspect of it. Right? Having said that, the teacher in a classroom is not a sage on the stage, but a guide on the side, right? So please think for a while. The teacher in the classroom is, I don't want to elaborate on this, is not a sage on the stage where I say that whatever I tell you, please listen. No way. That nobody is going to accept that. But now is a guide on the side. Now you are only helping the learners, guide them, mentor them to. So guide on the side means what it means. It speaks a lot. Guide on the side, right? If you are going for a tour, he will be a guide. What is he going to do? Right? He is very courteous to us, and he has certain objectives for which. So there are several things that comes into other than simply delivering the talk to the class, imparting the knowledge. Now here, so if the motivation is the key aspect of making the learner to learn, and there's no second thoughts on this. Motivation, how learners are motivated to learn, how motivation they had is the intrinsic strength for you to go ahead with the learning. So for the learner to learn. Now, most of the cases, the motivation for the learners in the present day context is only based on the extrinsic reward. Extrinsic reward. Extrinsic reward means essentially you gain your grades, grade points, you get your first class CGPA. That is an extrinsic reward, right? So motivation just cannot be due to an extrinsic reward, should not drive, but their intrinsic interest, the motivation to learn should not be based on the extrinsic reward, but should be on the intrinsic interest. You should create an intrinsic interest in the students to understand the subject rather than they being motivated to learn only whatever the things that is required to fulfill the extrinsic reward like CGPA and the grade in that particular subject, right? It is a responsibility of the teacher to bolster the intrinsic interest in the learner, right? So this, I'm sure all of you agree that without motivation, the learning cannot take place. Now, the responsibility of the teacher to include that what is the motivation here. That's what we all been doing as a teachers. We in the first class, I request a few minutes, any of you, any of the teachers, what would be your first activity, first day activity in any class? First time you are teaching to a new batch of students, what will be your first class be comprises of? Can any of you to unmute and respond? My question I am repeating. So as a teacher, if you are teaching when you are facing for the first time, first day in a class of new class which you are going, how do you, what is should be your activity, what you do?
Self-introduction. Self-introduction and introduction about students.
Yeah, so I'm going to introduce myself and then I'm so and so and so and so, and then you ask the students also to get introduce themselves, because as a learner I should know their what they are, whom you are, and so on. What next? There's one after introduction.
Their habits, sir. Their habits.
Yeah, their hobbies. You are going out of it. Why you need to learn hobbies? Because we should understand the personalization. The personalized contacts with the student will influence his thought process. So and hence it is required. Yes. So getting into the personalized personal domain, like finding hobbies, what their strengths, and so on. Any next?
Their subject knowledge, how much they know actually.
Yeah, with regard to the subject of what the present course, what I'm on.
Prerequisites.
Yes. Yeah. So you try to understand their prerequisites or the knowledge in their prerequisites, how far they fulfill. For example, I'm talking about machine dynamics. So what are the prerequisites that are required for the students, whether they have what their knowledge is. I'm going to assess that. That is one. Any other? I will assess the, I ask some couple of questions to students and throw some questions on the prerequisite knowledge and assess how far they are following it. Any other? What is the next step that you do?
Objective of the subject, sir.
Yeah. So you are going to, why you are going to give the big picture of this particular subject. Why should they learn, right? So by learning this particular subject, let's say power systems, I'm an electrical engineering faculty, so I use examples of electrical engineering. When talking about something about power systems, I should give them the bigger picture of, not just draw the single line diagram and say generator, this is what a power system is. I should speak the real-time scenario of how a power system looks like, how it would be. You should create a big picture. And why should they learn? Why should they learn is the motivation. That means the motivation should come from, yes, as a student, once you are graduate and you are going to work in, let's say, Power Grid Corporation of India, National Thermal Power Corporation, or some industries, GE or Siemens, and some industry, what is the role that is expected of an engineer in that particular organization, the nature of the work that you are engaged with, how the knowledge, this subject knowledge is going to help them. So you create a bigger, you find a bigger reason for them to learn. That is what it comes as a motivation, right? So we give a big, that's what in general we call it a big, show them a big picture of why should they learn, right? So that is the key aspect of it. Then once you give the big picture of the why they should learn, that will be that will make them to commit, pay attention to the what the teacher is doing. All of you agree with that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sure.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sure.
Yeah. So now if you look at the types of learners, there is in a class, the general problem that we face is there are 3 classes of learners, and this is not a classification, is based on some literature. It is deep learners. The deep learners are essentially, for them to make their performance, they don't need the teachers, but the teachers can ignite them, throw more challenges to them so they can advance their learning. And the bulimic learners, the mid segment of this means essentially deep learners are the ones who are in the top bracket of 15%, 20% of their, so they're essentially, they have inherent motivation. They all have the prerequisite knowledge, but they can easily advance to the objectives what we are setting for in a course. And then they need the teacher with the advance their more challenges in the subject must be thrown at to them. And then the other one is a bulimic learners. The bulimic learners are the ones which are in the mid band. So essentially they have a what is known as a, because they have certain commitments, whatever they obey, whatever the teacher says, but not because of the inherent motivation, because something since they need to do it, they are attending, they need to do it, they are compelled to do it, they keep doing it, right? This is an amount of force is required on this kind of learners, where you should force them to learn, then only they learn, right? And you have other category of learners is performance avoiders. The performance avoiders always have a fear of failure. So they don't want to make an attempt, they don't want to break the ice, because if they break the ice, they have a fear of failure will haunt them, and they will not, that fear of failure will be running behind their minds to make a move forward in learning. Let's say you give an exercise, but they don't, I may not be able to do it, and then possibly I don't have enough background, my language is not good, or that kind of a fear of failure is always haunts them, and then they will not participate actively in the activity whatever you conduct. Now I'm talking about when every student is expected, when I'm talking a class of 60 and all 60 of them are expected to achieve the learning outcomes what I want to realize, without the understanding these individual barriers each of them they do have, without addressing them, I just cannot think of how I can make all the 60 students to come with the level of attainment or outcomes what I want to realize, right? So it is essential to address all these three kinds of learners in a class. All of you agree with this or not? But how it is? Yes, it is a very tough task for the teachers to handle. But then, if you want to meet the bigger objectives of the education, you need to address the needs of all the three kinds of learners. All of you agree with this?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, only I'm seeing only one response from who is saying yes just now?
Sir, Tirupati Kadam from Hyderabad.
Yeah. So others are not responding. I request you please.
Sharma.
Yeah.
Sharma.
Yeah.
To avoid maximum, what do you call?
Oh, you unmuted them.
Cross talking.
Okay.
We by default we have silenced the.
Okay. Right.
That's why
right.
probably response is not.
Possibly you can put it to the chat box. You can use the chat box. Yes, I'm seeing that the SS.
They are putting a lot of things in chat box. You can see in chat box.
Yeah, I saw now, just now. Okay. Now, so now we have all the three kinds of students. How do the students advance that? I'm looking at what are the objectives. There is a certain learning level that I'm defining before the commencement of the class, and I want all the students to attain this level of learning by all these three kinds of a group of students. So how do I do that? So what do I do? So before that, let me Siegfried Engelmann is a very, how he gives this is also one of the articles on the web. I think I have given as a reference towards the end. Any student can learn any skill. Any student can learn any skill provided the teacher creates a right environment. Any student can learn any skill provided the teacher creates a right environment. Under what conditions? Any student can learn any skill. They have mastered the prerequisite knowledge and skills, right? They have mastered prerequisite knowledge must be same, and the instruction is unambiguous. The teacher, what are the outcomes that I want to make them to realize, the instruction is unambiguous by the teacher, and students are placed in instruction at their skill level. This is most important. Students are placed in instruction at their skill level. Now the skill level of the three kinds of learners what we have seen is different, right? So now you can't expect the bulimic learner to come to a learning level. The learning has to be continuous. Learning cannot be discontinuous. Now if the learning of the learner is at some level X, and if I'm assuming the learning level at Y, and there's a gap between X and Y, is creating a big hurdle for my learner, right? So that means it is not you are not making the students at their skill level. You are talking about assuming at some other level, right? So instruction is modified to accommodate each student's rate of learning. This is most important. right? Instruction should be liberated, modified to accommodate each student's rate of learning. That is the key aspect of it. How do I, that's what our friend from Durgapur has asked, how do I instruction is accommodated or modified to keep pace with the rate of learning? That means though I am engaging all 60 students, my engaging the students for all of them should be at different rates. But in a live class, in a synchronous mode, there is no way that you can achieve to the students' rate of learning, but only way by which you can reach the students' rate of learning is engaging them in asynchronous, right? So that is the reason why the program structure is designed to ensure the mastery of the content. So here, let me, how many of you heard about the Bloom? Those who have heard about Bloom, please type yes. I know Bloom. How many of you heard about Bloom? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. All of you know that the Bloom's taxonomy of cognitive the learning outcomes, and I'm not getting into details of the same. Benjamin Bloom, who has defined this taxonomy for learning outcomes, is also, he has conducted one experiment, Benjamin Bloom's experiment. He has conducted a class of 30, right, conventional class, and then there is another class in which mastery learning. In the case of mastery learning, he has spent, for every individual, he paid attention to clarify certain doubts. In this conventional class, there is no intervention of the teacher in between. He goes to the same instruction to all, right? And this is the learning outcomes. This is the number of, this is the summative scores, and this is the number of students, right? The number of students at the level, at different levels of, for example, this is the average assessment levels, what the students learn, and the average is this much, and then these are the summative assessment, the learning levels of the students, and they are less. So in a conventional classroom, without any teacher's additional intervention, he delivers his class, and then he conducts the test, and the assessment of the what is the number of students versus the y-axis number of students, and x-axis is the summative assessment scores. This is your conventional so-called your Gaussian curve. That's what I expect. Now he has modified his class, that in the sense the same set of 30 students for not same another set of 30 students, his approach is modified. That means he given the class, he also intervened at the clarifying doubts. He spent more time other than the regular class and clarifying their doubts as a group, and then he conducted the test, and the performance of the students is given by this curve. This is what he calls as a mastery learning. That means you can see that the average learning by the number of students who learned this average learning is increased, and then both. So if you look at this, if you call this is a mean, if you call this is a mean, the mean of the mastery class is about a standard deviation, it is increased by 1 standard deviation, right? You can see this is a standard deviation from this mean, and this is the mean of this. So this mean to this mean is deviated by about standard deviation. It is increased by 1 standard deviation. That means by teacher intervening in the clarifying the doubts for the students, the test scores, average test scores of the students is increased by 1 standard deviation. This is what this curve is. Now he further conducted the same experiment. He taught the students at the individual level. That means for all 30 students, he counseled them, all 30 of them. For then individually he taught, and then conducted the test for all the 30. I'm sure that is a logical guess. So you can see that the mastery of this average, the attainment levels, the number of students as well as the attainment levels of the students is increased dramatically. And then he found that there is the average attainment, the level as the number of students is increased by 2 times the standard deviation. This is what is 2 sigma. So that means if the students are engaged at the personalized level, the average attainment levels of the student is very high. That's what the double sigma effect, what the Benjamin Bloom proposes. Is this concept is clear? Right? So my question is now in a class of 30, now this is not 30, now class of 90, how do I increase my average attainment levels, learning levels of the student to a large number like this deviated by sigma, right? So what is the possible solution? Is this concept is clear? If it is not, I'll just repeat again. So if the student, yes, okay. Santosh Das, yes. Okay. Now, the Benjamin Bloom, he has conducted the experiments to show to the world, that the individual tutoring will have a significant effect on the learning outcomes of the students. That's what he wanted to show and prove to the world, and that's what is taken as an example for postulation of the new education and then education learning environment by providing the learning environment. This is where, how do I, my class is 90 now, how do I get this class of 90 where I have only 40 hours in a semester and 60 minutes for one class, and then how do I get the attainment levels of the students from this level to this level? That is the problem statement which I want to propose. Any thoughts on this? Any thoughts on this? How I can do about it? No voice? Is my voice is clear, Ravikumar?
Yes, sir. Maybe that may be problem.
Yes, sir, now coming, sir.
Sir,
Now coming, sir. Now coming. It's okay, sir. Now okay.
Yeah.
Hello.
Okay. Yeah, I want to hear a few minutes. Any of you, your thoughts?
Sarma.
How do I? Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Chat lo చూస్తే రాస్తున్నారు జనాలు.
చూస్తున్నాను. I opened my chat box. I'm saying voice is very clear. Okay, Ravikumar is saying,
says availability of time is the biggest challenge.
yeah, availability of time is biggest challenge. Okay. So you cannot ask for a subject. You can't provide instead of 1 hour, 3 hours of class for the same subject. The institution, the management, and you cannot afford to provide that. But then how else we can engage the students, right?
Hello.
That is the challenge. Where your technology plays a role. Yes, please.
Sir, I think to some extent discussions in the lab can help us in focusing on individual students.
Yeah.
In theory class it is not possible, but in labs to some extent we can spend more time and focus on individual requirements of students, sir.
Exactly, right? But then the time has come where just there's not, you cannot say that individually I cannot pay attention, but then if you have to carry out the business of making the attainment levels of the students to be high, and how do you address this challenge, right? That is the problem on hand. Now, how many of you, anyone of you have heard LMS? How many have heard about LMS or having some experience in LMS, learning management system? Anybody is using the LMS?
BSVs are using, sir.
Yes, sir.
Pardon? Yeah. So in the learning management system, if you typically look at, your focus of the learning management system is to engage the student in asynchronous mode. That's what I want to tell you, right? You create a lot of questions, you assess them, you interact them, and not necessarily in the class. In the class, I only deliver, but outside the class, I will engage the student in an asynchronous mode to reach out to the students, understand their levels, and then clarifying their doubts, the personalized how. So to personalize my attention to the individual students, the only way by which I can pay attention is going for an asynchronous platform through which I can interact with the students. That's what essentially your learning management system provides an opportunity, not only for assessing it, but then understanding the conduct a quiz, and then I understand how many of them are doing, how many of them have not done. If there's something I have not done, I already have a communication to them. I can send individual messages, personalized messages, and understand few questions, post some few questions. I can engage the students in an asynchronous mode using your digital techniques, right? Using the digital platform. That's what is essentially the solution what I am going to talk about. Yeah, I see that Palaksha Reddy immediately after CAA. What is CAA? Assess the student technological comprehension levels and arrive at mental maps of handling each student. Exactly, right? But that also based on the time. Time is, somebody has said the biggest constraint is the time. So you just cannot like I engage the students only in a single 60 minutes and then I'll try to do all this, which is not possible. Because at the end of the day, you are responsible for the institution to say that you have to complete your syllabus and then set your governance rules of the institution, right? Everything you have to follow. But keeping all that in mind, engaging the students, the only way is to engage the students in an asynchronous mode of engaging them is the key aspect with which I carry on and address these issues, right? So any of the platforms which any of you are aware of to engage the students in asynchronous mode. Engage the student means I am in 24/7, I am in touch with the students. As and when I am convenient, I pay attention, and the students are also at their own convenience, they will be communicating to me. Providing them a communication platform, 24/7 open communication platform to communicate with the teacher and the learners. Anybody is aware of any of the platforms? Yeah, Genomio, Moodle, yes, Madhusudan Razu. Moodle is an excellent management system, learning management system where we keep engaging the learners, right? So here, that's what I want to focus on. So apart from that, there are several tools are there. And then there are three ways of thinking about the teaching. So one is the teaching skills, and then the teaching skills, right? Understanding the pedagogy. Teaching models. What are the different models based on the subject, based on the whether I take them for a visit or bring some models to a class, or I bring some animation to the videos from outside into my classroom. All that comes under then teaching relationships. Most important thing is the motivation, right? So first you should make them to pay attention to you. So how do you make the student to pay attention to you? Though physically they are present here, they are looking at your class, and now essentially this is all the more difficult in this particular mode. Yesterday I tell you, yesterday we on the lighter side, we have been conducting some training program on LMS for the asynchronous mode in Google Meet. So yesterday the program was over at 8:30, right? The program is closed. Still some of the participants are actively on the screen on the Google Meet. I am sure you can guess what could be the reason is, right? You keep your video off and audio off, and then you keep engaging in something else, right? That's what it is. So and that's all the more reason now for the teacher, when you want to engage the students in a offline mode, virtual mode like this, it is very important. So engaging the student, these are the three important skills that are required, and your proficiency of the teaching learning will be reflected upon these all the three. So how far you are taking care of this, how far you are using the different teaching models that are prescribed, and how you are maintaining the relationship with all your stakeholders involved in it. It is going to influence the whole learning process, is influenced by that. Now I'm sure now the future of the economy, so far we have been talking about the knowledge-based economy. Knowledge-based economy is essentially is only information, and knowledge is the source of economy. But now recently the Confederation of Indian Industries, as well as in the higher education sector, they conducted a number of workshops how to move from the knowledge-based economy to creative-based economy. Creative-based economy is essentially the contributor to the economy is no more the knowledge, where global success is increasingly being driven by ideas, creative economy, rather than by the distribution and use of the information. Information is a gone era now. The future is going to be the creative economy. If your learners are going to contribute to the economy, so how creative they are, how innovative they are, that decides. So that means here, if it is we are moving from away from the knowledge economy to the creative economy, the graduates who are coming from our education institutions should be able to contribute significantly to that by virtue of their training in the education to train them for creative and innovative thinking, right? This I want to ascertain that the need for accommodating the diversified learning in their students. Right, and this is a famous Confucius words of wisdom. All of you are aware of it. So this is very much important for educationists to follow. So if I make the students to understand, I should do this where you were engaging them, the student, by doing some project, doing something, and making them to demonstrate some visuals, and then was the last thing was only to make them hear, right? So we should implement the strategies involving engaging them, do with some activities, engaging them with some demonstration and audio visuals, and then possibly also making them to hear. So this is to be deployed in my teaching learning process. Yeah, for want of time, just I'll skip some of the so what is required is, if you want to make the learners to be successful in their careers, I should make them a lifelong learner, and then to do that, I should facilitate learning in multiple modalities, right? Facilitate learning in multiple modalities, not necessarily in the world of digital era, where why should one of the important challenge that we need to throw at ourselves, our world is throwing at us, is why should a student come and sit in your class when a professor from MIT or a Stanford is coming to his desktop and delivering the content, right? Doesn't mean that you can get away with it. Then definitely that means you should make the teacher should continue his relevance in the class in spite of the material that is available, in spite of prominent speakers from outside the course modules, from Coursera, and they're available. And the teacher should find the relevance to continue further, make the learners to come to your class, right? So that involves the facilitate the learning in the multiple modalities. In open learning ecology, teachers must embrace greater diversity of spaces, times, resources, media, and methods of learning. 21st century learning environments are synchronous, asynchronous, face-to-face, virtual, local, and global. So now the learning environment is global. So he has an opportunity to learn from anywhere, from in asynchronous mode, even a live mode. There are a lot of classes that's happening. For example, all of you know that the NPTEL lectures that are going to come up in the next semester. Yes, you can sit in your room and then you can listen to a lecture from IIT Madras, IIT Bombay, IIT Delhi through courses. So this is what the environment is moving, right? So from a conventional classroom, the learning environment is drifting away from a conventional classroom is no longer, but then is drifting to an asynchronous mode, engaging them in a virtual mode, engaging them in a local and a global mode. Right? Your environment should move. We should be adaptive to that. And work as effective members of a learning teams. Teachers will be part of learning teams with a wide range of knowledge and skills whose expertise is orchestrated to improve the learning, right? So you cannot claim that I am the master of the subject, what I am teaching. You cannot no longer say the Zoom. Earlier are the days where if you're getting into the class, maybe 10 years back, if you get into the class, you can ensure that I am the person who has the highest knowledge, and knowledge transfer becomes very easy. You no longer can assume that. Possibly there may be students in the class where already they have taken some courses, and I'm not talking about everywhere, but there will be exceptions. Some students can be there where they already learned some things and they may have a higher exposure to a certain domain than the teacher. So in this context, the teacher's expertise, you should always getting into what is known as a team to facilitate the learner side as a guide on the side of a teacher. Your role should be a guide on the side of a student, right? So in this context, it enhances improve the performance of the learner. Use the full range of digitalized learning tools to improve the student engagement and achievement. This is the order of the day that is required. All the digitalized learning tools are available. You should engage the student using the digitalized digital tools, which has a potential to engage them, which conventionally cannot handle, should be addressed. Teachers will draw on digital technology to customize learning activities for individual student needs. Work with the students to co-create new learning opportunities. Teachers must respect their students' abilities to contribute to the work of their learning team, right? You don't know in which quarter of the student, from which side, which part of the class, a student will have certain abilities. You should be sensitive to recognize the abilities of the students and then take them into consideration and then move forward and creating a right environment, making the advancing the learning of all the students. And be lifelong learners, this we all know. The be global educators no longer confines the students to education. You as a teacher, you should be a continuous learner. You must be adaptive to adopt and then understand the globe. No longer my institution, and no longer you can say that I am the best teacher in my institution or best teacher in my domain. This is, you should be competing at the global level educators. So you should learn the new things that is required and then keep upgrading your competencies to see that you are doing the ultimate objective of making the learners to learn. Now, I'm sure all of you, I'm not getting into details of the flipped classroom, blended learning. I'm sure many of you must have heard about this, about the use of the flipped classrooms and the blended learning. So you need to engage the students in the, not only in the classroom, but then engage the classroom effectively, right? So whatever the classes that I'm going to engage for 10 classes or 15 classes or 30 classes, I should engage them effectively. That means the number of hours of engagement remains the same, but the learning outcomes of the student must be enhanced, right? So how do I do that? That's where it is, the role of the digital technologies that plays in a flipped classroom. In a conventional flipped classroom, you share the knowledge to the students, read the material and everything. The MOOC courses are available. You make the students to go through the courses, go through the resources. What are the resources? Share them beforehand. You expect the student to go through the material that is available and then spend your time in clarifying and make his thinking, understand his thinking. What is the level of his understanding? Ask him few questions. You ask the students to read by themselves and then conduct a quiz for 10 minutes and then understand how far they understood. You build that knowledge from their, instead of starting from the scratch, because it's not that they're all gifted learners. In fact, they are 21st century learners. We are, at least I'm talking about considering maybe all of you may be youngsters, but then I am 50 plus, I consider that is the previous generation. Possibly we are slow in learning, but then the present learners can learn things very fast. So you give them what they can do and you engage the class in a synchronous mode, what they cannot do it, right? So that with an objective of enhancing the learning of the students. So there are a lot of tools that are available. There is a video content you can create. I don't need to wait for my class to deliver. I can always create my presentation in the YouTube in the MP4 format and share the students beforehand. And then there are a lot of video creation contents, open source video creation contents like Presentation Tube, OBS, and Loom. There are several open source video creation contents you can create from your laptop and then share this to the students before, and then let them go through that video, and then you spend your time in the class to understand their doubts rather than, right? And sharing platform, there are several platforms that is available. Essentially, learning management system provides or engages the teachers and students with all these digital tools. The sharing platform, like for example, the Edmodo, Google Classroom, there are several, Microsoft Teams, there are several ways of engaging the students and sharing the information to the students before we really meet them. That means engaging the student in a synchronous mode. And LMS, you have learning management system, the Moodle, Q, Canvas, Blackboard. There are several learning management systems. There's reason why, especially in this context of COVID, where we cannot have the classes physically, the LMS is gaining ground almost. In fact, other day when I saw the statistics in the Moodle, India is in the, if you look at the top 10 countries who are using the Moodle, India is in the top of all the countries who is using the Moodle for learning as part of their learning management system in the different parts of the institutions. So assessment tools, there are several assessment tools, the digital assessment tools. As I told you, keeping the students' enthusiasm in the class is utmost importance for them to pay attention to you, and hence there are several ways of assessing the students in the class, flickers, clickers, and so on and so forth. And for synchronous mode, all of you know that these are all your GoToMeeting, Microsoft Teams. They're all, you all aware, and we are left and right, we are using the synchronous mode. Yeah, these are the, I just show one thing. Can anyone recognize what it is? So this is a class in my class of the students in the last semester. Can anyone recognize what it is? So you see that all the students are there, they're all smiling, right? There's a lot of enthusiasm in making the students. Any of you YouTube video lessons, Google Classroom, Canvas, yeah, Flickr card, yes, Vignesh Nayak, yes, this is a Flickers. Clickers is a digital tool where in your laptop you can conduct a quiz and then scan the students, right? These are the scanning cards. So it will make the students to scan, and then immediately somebody was asking how do I gauge their mental maps, right? So I cannot conduct, you cannot wait for the class to conduct in the next after 1 week and then understand them. Then and there itself, you quickly share a quiz and then show this. It hardly takes you 5-10 minutes. So this is using the clickers as a digital tool. I can assess the student's performance then and there, and then I clarify the doubts. So you can always get the statistics. So how many of them answered right, how many of them are not answered wrong, and then I can spend time on clarifying the doubts then and there itself. This is where just I want to give an illustration of how a digital tool can be enhanced to understand their mental maps and then see that clarify their doubts. And more than that, if your students will be very enthusiastic in sitting in they are all 21st century learners using these digital tools in the classroom, they will be more enthusiastic. Anyway, this is just to give an example of how a digital tool can enhance the learning outcomes in the student. Likewise, there are so many digital tools there. I'm not going into details of all of them, but then I wanted to show you. Yeah, I have a 5 minutes time, Rai Kumar. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll not getting into details of this. Actually, I planned if time had been there, I would have demonstrated this, but then I don't want to demonstrate on this. But then I can tell you how this Edmodo as a digital platform that can be used for engaging the students more effectively. It is a free online. Anybody heard about Edmodo? Possibly some of you might be exposed and using the Edmodo. Any of you are aware of Edmodo? How many of you are aware of Edmodo? Can you please type yes if you already know? Yeah, Vignesh Naik is yes, same thing. Yeah, right. There is Edmodo is a platform where it enables the students to engage with. So here is an open source platform, edmodo.com, and then teachers can register for this platform as a teacher, and then you can create a classroom in this Edmodo platform, and then I don't know. I just 2 minutes. I'll share that Edmodo website. I'll stop sharing this. Ravi Kumar, how do I share a different? Yeah. Other than the screen, can you see any other thing? Other applications?
Yes, sir. You can share the entire thing, na? So you are sharing only the part of PPT or desktop.
Yeah. I will open that and I'll share it. Okay.
Yes.
What you are seeing is this only, right? No, I want another Chrome tab. I opened it. I want to show it to the.
ఆ బ్రౌజర్ లోనే ఇంకో ట్యాబ్ కొట్టు.
ఇంకో ట్యాబ్ అందులోనే. Yeah. Now I'm able to do that. So you're able to see the screen. Third BTech 2020.
No, sir, it's not visible.
Not visible.
Sir, మీరు షేర్ చేయలా మీది.
నీ స్క్రీన్ షేర్ చేయి.
స్క్రీన్ షేర్ చేయండి ఒకసారి. షేరింగ్ ఆప్షన్ ఒకసారి కొట్టండి సార్.
Is now paused, he's saying.
ఒకసారి నొక్కండి సార్. Yeah. Now you are able to see. Yeah. Third BTech 2020.
Yeah. For example, you can always Edmodo as a teacher, you can create a class of like this, and then share the Edmodo gives you a passcode, and you can share the passcode to the students, and all the students, for example, you see that there are students in the class. These are all the students who joined as a students in this. There are 146 students as members of the this, right? So you can make that. That means now once I create a class and make the students enroll for this my class, and then you can go on with several things. For example, I tell you by post. Yeah, these are all the several things that is been happening on the. I can share a lot of things on the asynchronous. This is how I propose this Edmodo. One such thing can be used as an asynchronous mode of engaging the students. So I post some, for example, I want to post some videos and which are available outside, and then create them. I share them in the class, but I don't spend time on discussing this. But I only show them in the class, but I make the students to see outside the class and then come with the knowledge and have only discussion in my class, right? So likewise, I can engage the students, I can create some polling to the students. So these are all the different videos, because essentially in engineering, how do I make the outside things that's happening to be brought to their classroom? You can't bring it because the time is a limit. But then using an asynchronous mode of this thing, I can share a particular YouTube's, whatever. For example, I want to talk about the SCADA of power systems, what a practical power systems, what a practical generating station will look like, all those important features in a video mode. I'll bring them onto my classroom, and then I post them here. For example, look at this is where okay, before this I'll show some. Yeah, for example, this is a typical distribution of when we talk about distribution system of a power system, you can't bring in the creating how a power system look like. It represented as a single line diagram. It's very difficult to bring in what are the different components that is present in the substation. What I do is I share this on the student in the Edmodo platform. I'll make the student is attached with the JVL program, and then setting up the relays at 10%. I give them some example of try to work out the following problem in overcurrent relays, practice more problems like this which are available in the different textbooks. So I post this, and then next in the classroom I will only share I will only initiate the discussion on solving this problem. I don't, because and I encourage the students to get the mobiles into the classroom. They will get their mobiles, and this problem on hand is there in the mobiles. So it is very easy for us to go rush through and solve the problems. In fact, we also conduct the various polling can be conducted. For example, I wanted during the course of teaching of the subject, I wanted to take them to a substation. How many of you are interested to visit the substation, right? So here, this is the polling statistics indicates that many of the students are interested to come, and some of them are not interested because of some reasons. So, but then this kind of a polling can be created, and then socializing. You can also use them for socializing just on a given day, how they feel. Because the socializing with them is a very important aspect of making them to pay attention to you. So you should be able to good at socializing with them, and so on and so on. Not for the sake of socializing, but should be a contextual. So likewise, these are the tools with which, for example, you can also conduct the quiz also. Just quickly. So these are the as engaging the student in asynchronous mode, and you can also conduct the for example, this is so I can always conduct the quiz, right? For example, this is the quiz I wanted to. This already quiz has been created. This is to test the prerequisite. This is to test the prerequisite. The first class within the first 1 week, I created the quiz, making the students towards these details. Yeah, I'll preview. My screen got locked. Yeah. So likewise, so you can always conduct a quiz offline, and then you can assess the students. So somebody was asking about how do I personalize. Now, and because of the time, otherwise I can show for example, a 10 marks question I conducted, and then you can get the statistics like how many of them answered correctly on the first question, how many of them answered rightly on the second question, third question, and so on and so forth. I conduct a quiz, and then next class When I go there, I spend time on identifying and clarifying the doubts on the questions what the students have given wrongly. But some of the students, I can also go with the personalization. So some of the students have not done very well. I can always post some additional material to them, why they are not able to do it, and so on and so forth. So, and hence it provides you an opportunity to engage the students 24/7 outside your class hour as well. And hence this is a kind of a tool where asynchronous mode of engaging the students will advance the learning of the students. Average learning of the student get advanced by using the digital tool like Edmodo. I'm not saying only Edmodo. Edmodo is one such tool. There are several other tools are there. So these are the different digital tools with which the faculty must be engaged with. So that ultimately at the end of the day you realize to maximize the learning outcomes as shown by the Blooms, not necessarily that individual, but at least something in media, via media. You should definitely, when you engage only like class but in asynchronous mode, engaging the student in asynchronous mode will definitely advance his average learning is increased by 1 standard deviation based on the kind of activities. It can go up to 2 times the standard deviation based on the engaging, how effectively you are engaging. But engaging the students in an asynchronous mode has a profound influence on the average learning. And hence, as a teacher, if you are towards enhancing the learning outcomes of the students, possibly you need to go with the, I'll come back with my presentation. Yeah. Right. So I'm sure that people can explore, the teachers, participants can explore on the registration of the board and then make use of it. And if you have any questions on this, you can be more than happy to address. Right. So this is something. So you can Edmodo is a free platform, can share audio, video, text content, can conduct online tests, provides asynchronous connectivity between the teacher and taught, and you can use a flipped classroom, personal care, assessment. Learner learns at his own pace. All that. When we said the learner should be given a chance to, his learning will be better if he is learned at his own pace, right? At his own learning rate. So this provides all the platforms. That's why we have an LMS in place. So this is the digital tools, the background of the digital tools. What I think I'll just skip this, and because of time, and I would be more than happy if you have any, because I don't want to venture into the next speaker's domain. So I would be any few questions. If you have anything, you can post them. And this is my email ID. I will be happy, more than happy to address any of the queries with regard to the subject. So I quickly on the chat box, you were any questions or any. Yeah, particularly if there are any questions. Edmodo, is it a private or social networking? It's not a social networking software. It is essentially a platform only for teachers and the students, not the social networking. Show an example of how acquisition of personalized mental map. Yeah, actually, I have the quiz I conducted. I can understand, I can show you the demonstration. For want of time, I was not able to do it. I will be more than happy. Who is that? Anand Ravi, to interact with you and then share your email to me, and I will respond.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Sir, I wanted to know whether Edmodo is like completely free, or is there any other like premium membership and all?
Completely, it is free. I have been using for the last 3-4 years. It's completely free. But
Okay,
I don't. If now this demand is increasing, possibly right now it is free. But I cannot tell you in the future is going to be. But right now it is free. Till now.
Hello,
Okay.
Krishnan sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yes, please. Somebody is speaking. Yeah. So that's all from my side.
Hello.
Hello. Kumar, somebody is trying to speak.
Okay, sir. Yeah. Hello. One quick question. Last question. So anybody wants to ask question? That will be the last question. Why? Because we are approaching.
Yeah, to the next speaker.
Yeah. Hello. Okay, sir. I think.
Okay.